Today, we're going to talk about small and mid-sized businesses and the transformative role AI should be playing in their future. You probably heard about generative models, language agents, and enterprise AI stacks and whatnot, but what about the bakery, the logistic firms, the family-run manufacturer? Why are these businesses so often left out of the AI revolution? And more importantly, what can be done about it? Our guest is Justin Massa, a seasoned technologist, product thinker, and founder who's now laser focused on bridging the gap between cutting edge AI and the everyday companies that need it most. Justin is the founder of Midwest Quality Consulting, where he advises SMBs on how to thrive with generative AI. And he also publishes the newsletter AI for SMBs, sharing insight and practical guidance for small businesses looking to leverage AI technologies. In this episode, Justin will unpack the gap between what AI can do and what most SMBs are actually using it for, and share his vision for democratizing access to powerful tools, rethinking design roles in the age of AI, and training the next generation of AI native leaders. Justin, thank you so much for being here.
Mateo, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Me too. Let's get started with the very basics. What do you do today for a living?
Yes. So right now, I am a one-person consulting shop called Midwest Quality Consulting. Been doing this since October of last year. And there's kind of two main ways I engage with the world. One is I've got a bunch of just traditional consulting clients and got this kind of offer I've put together to kind of call it a generative AI strategic kickstart. And then 3 weeks ago to yesterday, so 3 weeks in a day, I launched a downloadable course that people can go and kind of take on their own time. And then there's kind of some cohort stuff I'm exploring what's next. But pretty much all of my time is spent helping businesses figure out how to leverage generative AI. And it's a blast.
So much to talk about there. What's going on in the world of AI and how are SMBs leveraging or not the tools that exist out there?
Yeah. So I think what I'm observing right now is almost every SMB I encounter is already doing something with generative AI before I meet them, right? But many times it's hidden in a corner of the organization, or it's like one person in frontline staff who's kind of doing it. And maybe they have the permission of their boss and maybe not, it's a little unclear. And then in lots of organizations, there's, to use the term from Ethan Malik, there are secret cyborgs, like the people who are doing it and just don't tell anybody. So I think that's in terms of kind of like what's happening right now. It's like a lot of people are dipping their toe in the water. They're kind of fiddling with it. I meet very few organizations that have moved to kind of that next phase where like they've done some experiments, they found value, and they've like formally implemented something as a part of their business process, right? Most people are kind of very early in their journey. And then I think kind of the challenge, and you were alluding to this earlier, Mateo, is like a lot of times when I meet those organizations, it's like the junior frontline staff that's doing stuff with AI. Right. And senior leadership of those organizations, like the owners, the C-suite, have sometimes not even used AI themselves directly at all. And so kind of their ability as leaders to see what's happening at the front lines and scale that is really, I think, the biggest barrier right now.
Wow, at all? You mean like they don't like use ChatGPT or whatever? Nothing.
At least once every other week, this happens to me. I'll be on a phone call with someone and we're talking about working together. And the CEO at the end of the phone call will say, "Hey, Justin, do you have an extra 5 minutes? Just stick around." And I'll stay a few minutes extra. And everybody else will hang up and they'll say, "Okay, Justin, I'm a little embarrassed. How do I use AI? Like, is it an app? Is it a website? Like, where should I go?" I mean, really, this happens to me a couple times a month.
Wow. It's so amazing.
Yes.
So SMBs could be leveraging AI in a completely different way. Enter Justin Massa. How do you help them do that?
Yes. So the way I think about it right now is like there's a ton of training and educational videos you can find online about AI. And I feel like, if those were for a car, they would be like, we're going to teach you how to drive by starting with talking about how you get rubber out of trees to make tires. It's like, yeah, I mean, tires are important for cars, but like you don't need to know how to like make a tire to drive a car, right? I feel like much the same way as like generative AI. Like it's a super technical, like talking about flops and transformer models and inference. And like, I don't know how to repair a car, but I drive perfectly fine. So what I really focus on is what I think of as like a business and strategic grounding to help people who are not technical, who are never going to write code in their lives, understand what generative AI means and can do in the very specific context of their business. So in every engagement, I kind of start with that. And a lot of it's really to kind of give an organization a shared vocabulary internally in which a non-technical group of people can talk about this emerging technology. Like, I feel like what's happening in the world of AI right now is every company is like trying to market their vocabulary, and it's making it very confusing for people. So I give people like this kind of non-branded, plain language, metaphor-heavy vocabulary to talk about all this stuff. And then I do a series of essentially like coaching sessions, which is like my clients tell me, if you had a magic wand, here's what I'd wave it on and use AI to do. And then I kind of walk them through how to do that step by step using the off-the-shelf frontier models. Essentially, I try and get them started on like the 20-yard line instead of the 1-yard line, to use an American football reference.
And can you give us an example of, I don't know, like sending out a newsletter, onboarding an employee, a customer, whatever? Give us an example of somewhere and what they were doing and what are they doing now after you help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So example I'll give you is from a small manufacturing company. Okay. So one of the things that this company has promised is that if you send them a request for a quote of like this very technical thing they manufacture, they will get you a response on that quote within 48 hours. Right.
Right.
And so before when I met them, that would come in and it would go to a customer service person who would kind of review it, and she would write it to an engineer, and the engineer would do the initial spec, and then they would write it to a quality person. 4 or 5 people would kind of touch it, and seldom did they make it back within 48 hours, right? Usually it would take them 3-4 days instead of just 2 days to turn these quotes. So we started kind of talking about it and digging in, and they wanted to be able to like really hit this timeline. And one of the first things we realized is that they treated every request for a quote exactly the same way, even though, maybe 10% were really complicated and really needed to take 3 days, and everything else they could probably do in a couple hours. But the frontline staff person who received the request for quotes didn't know which simple and what's complicated. So the very first thing that we started to work on is like, can we build a little AI application, just like use a custom GPT that looks at a request for a quote and just classifies it as to something that, yes, we can promise them we can do this in 24 hours. And in fact, maybe even sooner. Or no, yours is a little more complicated. We need a little bit of extra time. And here's the additional questions that you didn't give us in the request for the quote that we actually need to deliver for you, right? Before, that would have to go 4 or 5 steps in the process before they understood that. Now the frontline staff person gets to do it. That is, it's a little teeny tiny example, right? But already, within like 2 weeks, they're much more confident in their ability to turn quotes in the time they promised to a new customer. That's huge for a tiny business.
It is huge. So, but you bring a few things there, right? You bring your understanding of what AI can do.
Yes.
You bring your understanding of product, your understanding of processes, your understanding of how to tweak a process to make it more efficient.
Yes.
So
I'd say, Mateo, it's almost like I don't have like formal like Lean or Six Sigma training, but I feel like a lot of that kind of mindset is important. Like
right.
You really need to like take a business process and distill it down to its individual atomistic parts, right? And then look at each of the, because I find a lot of people, they're like, oh, AI is this magic wand, I'm going to wave it over the business. And they're like, oh, I want to have AI produce quotes. And it's like, maybe, but like producing quotes is really like 10 steps, not 1 step. Yep. Let's look at each of those steps individually. And what I find is that like AI probably can't do all 10 steps today. It can certainly do like steps 1, 3, 5, and 7 really well right now. Let's take advantage of that.
Right. And do you leverage, do you have like favorite tools that you leverage or ask your customers to use? Like I'm hearing you speak, right? And one of the tools that I like is N8N, and how I can plug AI agents into N8N, etc. Because we can visualize the process and get that Lean Six Sigma type mindset, right?
Yes. So, okay. So I would say there are like 2 buckets of tools I recommend. So the first thing I recommend to everyone I work with is you should be using the frontier models directly for a lot of your day, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is the frontier models are so, and by frontier models, I think there's like 3 families of frontier models that are really like business ready today. ChatGPT family of models, the Claude family of models, and the Gemini family of models. Not that there aren't frontier models that are very capable, but like you need like team and organizational level account management and information security. And like, those are the only three models that like do all of the things you want your AI models to do. So
Right.
my advice to everyone is you need to, I mean, you don't need all three. Pick one, at least one. You can use, I mean, I use all three. I think a lot of people use all three because they're pretty cheap. But like pick at least one, make it available to your team, give it a policy, all that kind of good jazz. Like that's like the foundation. And, you know, my recommendation is everyone should be running what I call scrappy experiments directly in the browser or in the apps using the frontier models, right? If it kind of works there, you can make it work much better using other techniques. But first, just figure out, does it kind of work? So that's one. The second thing is I'm a fan of N8N. I like clay.com. I like Lindy. There's a bunch of these like, you know, I call them almost like a Miro that you can bring to life, right? Like a visual tool where you get to sketch out a workflow and bring it to life. I am a very big fan of those, but I don't recommend people start there, right?
Okay.
I actually recommend you start because what I find is that people will try and build out like this 6-step thing and then it fails in a step. And they don't really know what step it failed at, right? So if you start just doing it in the browser, experiment, do it in the browser a few times, get it working reasonably well, you're going to be much better and faster at building it out in an N8N or a Clay or a Lindy or any of these other kind of tools.
Got it.
So I love those tools, but I don't recommend you start there. That to me is step 2.
So use the frontier tools that are out there. And you said a few times frontier labs are kind of ignoring SMBs, right? So tell me more about why do you think that is the case and what is the impact?
Yeah, so I'll say like I've reached out to my friends and you know used to work at IDEO. There's a lot of ex-IDEO around, and you know talked to like my friends at all the frontier labs. And as of you know this is a few weeks out of date, so maybe a change, but like as of a few weeks ago, not a single AI frontier lab even had an open research project, much less a team assigned to understand the needs of small and medium-sized businesses. They have chosen exclusively to focus on enterprise or to focus on consumer. And what they've told me is that they believe that SMBs are going to be perfectly well served by the consumer offerings, which I can tell you is not exactly true. Like they are leaving a massive amount of kind of money on the table right now. I think the reason they have kind of made this choice is there's a fair bit of revenue to be made on the enterprise side, right? You know, like, and really what most of their enterprise offerings are like more security that you pay for. You don't pay per account, you pay per usage, which actually increases the overall cost a little bit. And they're just like big dollar amount contracts, right? So my sense is from like a business model perspective, most of these labs have kind of told themselves like, oh, there's a lot more revenue to be made on the enterprise side. The thing that I think they are all missing right now is that those same enterprises have all tied themselves in knots about all of the work they must do before they truly leverage generative AI. Yep. So like every large enterprise I know is spending the next 6 months doing an internal data cleanup project, which frankly means they're less savvy and sophisticated users of AI, which my point of view means they're less helpful users for the frontier labs to improve their models. That's not how they understand it. The small business crew, they will go from, I wonder if AI can do this, to a structured experiment to figure out the right strategy, to fully implementing it in 5 or 6 weeks, right? Their ability to go, you know, smaller, simpler organizations, they're doing very sophisticated things with AI. They just don't have all that technical debt like the enterprises do. My gut tells me, like if I worked at one of these frontier labs, I would want a very large number of SMBs using my product because it would give me the best possible feedback. They don't seem to agree with what I just said. And I'm a little mystified by it. I mean, in one way, it means I get to do what I'm doing and I'm very excited about what I'm doing. So I can't complain too much, but like, I really wish they were there because like so many of my clients are so frustrated using these things. I mean, sometimes these products feel like a cruel joke and like, you know, they're so frustrated. There's maybe 15, 20 things that if they would fix these things, like simple, make Gemini gems shareable in a workspace. I have no idea why a Gemini gem isn't shareable in a workspace. I can tell you why. It's because they don't talk to SMBs. Right. Every SMB I talk to, it's the number one thing they want. I don't even know if Google has it on the roadmap right now.
So let's go back on memory lane and your background. And why do you think it positions you so well to help SMBs leverage AI today?
Yeah, totally, man. So I feel like if I look back on my career, I've spent a lot of time kind of being like a translator or like straddling between two worlds. One of those is like the technical world, and one of those is like the business or product world, right? So I've, you know, rewind the beginning of my career. worked in the nonprofit sector, and in the US we have this term like the accidental techie, like the person who worked at the nonprofit who wasn't technically trained but was more technical than everyone else. So, like 20 years ago, I was up in ceilings running network cables when that was the thing I had to do. I wasn't, I had one computer class in my life, and that was typing when I was a senior in high school. So no formal training, but I was the accidental techie. Then I started a nonprofit organization that was technology oriented. I worked at a civil rights law firm that used to do like civil rights tech work. And then I ended up working at a really interesting nonprofit that did like data consulting to other nonprofits. So I've always kind of been at like this intersection of data and creating new value. And then I'm not going to say it because it's going to date me. Long time ago, I founded a company called Food Genius that was a food service data and analytics company. So I kind of joke, I remember when we called this big data, like the t-shirts for Food Genius were big data for the food industry. Everyone called it big data. I remember we called it data science. I remember when it was neural nets and machine learning. And now it's, I've been at this game for a long time. So fast forward, I started a company, ended up selling that to US Foods, went to IDEO. When I was at IDEO, I led IDEO's exploration of data science, acquired a data science firm, scaled data science as a capability. And then the last 6 months before I left IDEO in the first part of 2023, I was co-leading the emerging generative AI practice at the firm. So I've spent, probably the last like 15 years of my career kind of focused at this intersection of data-driven emerging technologies and how to get value out of them in a business context. And this moment feels in some ways very different than the last few waves, and in some ways very similar.
How does it feel? So you work with small teams, you were a founder, you work with big teams, you grew big teams, you grew, companies, sections, companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now you are on your own doing consulting, right? Does it feel like you miss something or liberating and you move like a different speed? How does it feel?
It's liberating, man. Like and I think like if I had tried to do this pre-AI, it would have been very frustrating for me because I am not someone who excels in repetitive, detail-oriented work. Like that is not my strong suit. And so the thing, like the example I give everyone is, there was a project I did for one of my clients where if I had done the exact same project at IDEO, I would have assigned myself to it for a certain number of hours, and I would have assigned a full-time team of 3 people for 4 weeks. And I was able to do the project by myself in less time than I would have spent managing a group of 3 humans to do it in the prior paradigm. And that's just energizing and fun. Like I've always been someone who likes to work fast, and I'm able to like have the like grunt work part of my work keep pace with like the fast part of my work in a way that just like never existed before. So like I was a little worried I was feel it lonely. It's not at all. I've got a bunch of I'm on the phone all day with my clients, kind of engaging with them. And there's lots of like shared discovery that we do, which I find really motivating, but I've had a blast, man. I mean, I feel weird saying this. I got a daughter who's 15, who's, like thinking about what she's going to do when she grows up. But like, it's hard for me to imagine like hiring an entry-level person to do what I do, just because I've gotten into like a really good rhythm of like working at this really high level now.
Yeah. That opens up a good question, which, what is the impact on the workforce, right? What is the impact? The entry level folks, same thing, right? But this is the question that I have. You have you grew up and saw the technology evolve, and you kind of nurtured your critical thinking abilities during a different time. And now you can leverage everything that you have, that background, with today's technology. So how do you feel about that when you look at, and your daughter, etc.? How do you feel about the opportunities for the younger people?
I have to say, man, I'm really not sure. Like the thing that I really wish the Frontier Labs talked about more is like, how are they going to deploy AGI? So, like my daughter, she's 15, right? So by the time she is graduating from college, I have got to presume that we will have achieved AGI. We probably will have some form of ASI, because, that's like 9 years from now, or 8 years from now. And, the thing that's really striking to me about generative AI technology today that I think a lot of people miss is this is the most equitably distributed technology in the history of humankind. Like right now, basically anyone on earth can access the most capable technology human beings have ever created for $20 a month. That is staggering to say, right? is that still going to be the case? Like, if I were one of these frontier labs and I achieve artificial super intelligence, am I going to sell it to you for 20 bucks a month, or am I just going to use it myself? Like, and none of these companies talk about this, right? And this, I think, is the biggest question. Like, I was looking earlier today at the YC call for companies, right? And one of the very first thing I think, and one of the top ones is like vertically integrated AI companies. And like, I think their example is they don't want companies that are like building legal tech for law firms. They want a company that's just going to be a tech-enabled law firm, right?
Right.
Is that how this is going to play out? Like, is OpenAI just going to like, will OpenAI become like a law firm and like turn their super intelligence into a lawyer, or are they going to provide it? Like, I have no idea. And so I think like my anxiety comes from, if this is going to remain an incredibly equitably distributed technology, and maybe it's $200 a month instead of $20 a month, but like, if everyone on earth is going to get to continually access this incredible intelligence, I'm super excited about all of our futures, because what I have found is that for someone who like is willing to lean into their agency and has a bias to action, oh my gosh, it gives you superpowers. You can do unbelievable things with it, right? And if I imagine like a future state where, you know, if you have ambition and drive, you can do almost anything you want. Oh my gosh, is that exciting? And then if the flip side of that is if they choose to, equitably distributed technology to achieve ASI and then lock down that technology, I hope we have some kind of basic incomes. I'm not sure any of us are going to be doing.
Yeah, I keep going to, do we need to dream bigger? It's hard. It's gotten to a point where, every revolution took away some jobs by creating new jobs.
Yes.
But this one is like, okay, I'm not that sure about the new jobs. Like, prompt, who needs a, prompt engineer was a thing for a while,
Yeah.
or it was a media hype for a while.
Yeah.
It's not even a thing anymore, right? Do you need,
Yeah.
I mean, AI already has, eaten its own in that, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. I mean, look, man, the next place I think to watch is graphic design. I mean, between the O3 model, the 4.0 image generation, the new Gemini image generation. I mean, so this isn't all stitched together right now, but right now you have generative AI that can do really high quality, like visual reviews of assets. You have generative AI that can create really high quality assets. You have generative AI that can refine those assets based on pretty nuanced feedback. And you have generative AI that can collect feedback from humans. Like, how long before it's like, hey, AI, I need this image. And it doesn't just generate it for me, but it generates multiple versions and it tests them with consumers and it refines its answers and it comes back to me. Like, at that point, graphic design goes away. I think that's going to come first. Like, I think in some ways they're going to be like the canaries in the coal mine for the rest of us. I'm very curious to see how this plays out over the next year or two. And from talking to my friends who have been graphic designers, it's not a fun time to be a graphic designer right now. Like, it's a stressful time to be a graphic designer right now.
yeah, yeah. The one thing, but we're getting philosophical here, right? But the one thing that, that I go like, okay, we're going to figure out a way is, whomever is going to be, the richest person on earth, etc., they still need medium level people that are going to consume stuff, and we need money to consume stuff, right? So,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
what are we going to,
I
what
mean,
are you going to do?
to your
Create like
point.
a, super intelligence, and then just let everyone, not consume anything, and the economy is going to go down, right? So
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think I was looking to try to name something the other day and remember that phrase, like bread and circuses, which is like,
right,
we get the people bread and we get, but I think there's a post, and I'll send you this link, Mateo. Maybe you can put it in like the article description for this. I'm a big fan of Less Wrong, and I don't agree with everything that Less Wrong writes, but I like reading Less Wrong. They've got a really interesting post. I think it was from December of last year, at kind of wonders like, what are the implications of AGI at global scale? And it makes this argument that you can think of it as what AGI does is it turns capital into a more and more general substitute for labor, right? And then it plays through like, what are the implications of that in a way that's like not very fun? And it basically makes this argument like social mobility is going to be diminished and governments won't have to care about their populations because capital turns itself into labor. And if you don't need the physical labor or the mental labor anymore, why do you kind of care about your citizens? And if capital can turn itself into labor, then how does social mobility function? Because, tried and true story of social mobility in America is like the scrappy entrepreneur who's never willing to work for the big company, creates their own business and grows it from nothing. Well, if every large company on earth has the ability to hire an unlimited number of Steve Jobs, they can turn capital into any kind of labor they want. And like that has scary implications for the future.
Yeah. Super scary. Super scary. We're going to leave it at that. And
Yes.
we're going to talk about product designers, right? So you've been in product for, a long
Long time.
time. And it's like now you can turn your ideas into reality faster. So are product designers uniquely positioned to leverage AI in a different way just because of the way you think?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is the I would say kind of it's a combination of two things. It's like it's a willingness to suspend disbelief when you're engaging with AI. And I say that because I meet product designers who are skeptical of AI capabilities and struggle to use it, right? They're not willing to kind of actually invite it in as a true collaborator. The other half of that is, I mean, like I spent 8 years at IDEO. I think I've probably said the word prototype more times in my life than I care to admit, right? We used to have big signs on the wall that says it's just a prototype, right?
Right.
But I think that and the way that we talked about a prototype was the embodiment of a hypothesis, right? And if I think about the real superpower of designers and product designers in particular, it is their ability to understand what they're trying to do, understand their customers, and have a hypothesis about how they can better meet the needs of their customers, right? And it used to be that there were many interstitial steps between you as a leader coming up with that hypothesis and you actually deploying something to the world to test it. And that line has basically evaporated, and it is super exciting. It is just, I mean, it's the thing that I've said, like we used to say at IDEO, like, don't go to a meeting without a prototype. I don't know what they're saying. I haven't been there for a little while now. What I hear from most of my friends now is the new conversation is don't leave the meeting without having created the prototype. Like
Yeah.
before you walk out the door, someone's showing it on the screen, the thing that you just talked about.
It's definitely amazing. And I'm a lawyer, right? I'm an attorney by background. I'm working in software, but never ever I thought I could be doing some of the stuff that I do today.
Yes.
um
Yes.
and it's amazing, and it just, it opens up your imagination. So like you said, right, I hope that the way this transpires is that we keep enabling everyone to become a creator in the
Yes.
truest sense of the word, right? In the truest
Yes.
sense, like that's exciting.
It's like my daughter's a creative writer, like that's her passion in life, and we have wonderful arguments about like will she, and she refuses to use AI in her creative writing, which I give
Okay.
her a lot of. I mean, she's a teenager, and I appreciate that. Like she's like, oh, I got to learn, I got to figure these things out, right? But it's really interesting, like she has this point of view about like purity in an art form. And then I love to say things like, so did photography ruin portrait painting? I don't think photography ruined portrait painting. She gets really frustrated with me. But like, I think it's I'm very much someone who believes that like the introduction of this new technology is just going to like, in the same way that in the beginning, like photography was like, oh, you're destroying portrait painters. And then photography in and of itself became an art form.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that I just get like so excited about this is like, you know, portrait painting was available to a very tiny sliver of the world because you needed like this natural talent and all of this training in order to do it, right?
Yeah.
And then photography comes along, and a lot more people can be a creative photographer. Like there's people who had no formal training, like Vivian Meyer, who's like one of the most celebrated photographers of all time, who was like, I mean, discovered after that she had no formal training whatsoever. She just figured it out, right? It was a more democratized form of creative expression. Generative AI feels like the most democratized form of creative expression humans have ever figured out how to create. That's just exciting.
It is exciting. And the one thing I'm waiting for is, like, I have two kids, right? 7 and a 9-year old. I will love, I mean, it's expensive, right? But a picture you to school and now you have a challenge for the day, right? And they give you like, okay, you can use all the Frontier Labs AI, you can use a 3D printer, you can use these materials, and you need to, in 2 days, you need to create a drone that can cross the XYZ river.
That's amazing.
right? Use everything, but build,
Yes.
build and,
Yes.
and put it on the water and make it go,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then tell me what, how you did it and what you learned, right? Imagine school being like that. It's all practical, it's all stuff where
Yes.
we become creators. That's the future I would like to see.
That is, I hope that is the future we're headed towards, because that is like deeply motivating and inspiring to me. I feel like for a lot of people, that's a super inspiring future. But I mean, to where I'm look, I wish I had a crystal ball.
Yeah. We'll see. So when you do consulting, and sometimes it works great, sometimes it's all about how open, I guess, your customers are
Yes.
to what you are showing them. So what does your perfect Padawan look like? What makes you proudest when you are about to end a consulting gig?
Yeah. So I would say there's two moments for me that I really look for. So, when I work with a company, I insist on working with the entire executive leadership team, as well as everyone within the company that's been experimenting with AI. So it's like a cross-functional group. And in 100% of my engagement so far, there have been multiple open skeptics in the opening meeting, like people who tell me like, oh, generative AI cannot do that thing, or I am not going to use it, or I do not think this is exciting for whatever. I mean, people have many different reasons why they're opposed to AI, but 100% of my engagement so far, I've had at least multiple skeptics. And the first thing I look for is, can I convert the skeptics? And I feel, I'm gonna pat myself on the back here, I've converted 100% of the skeptics so far. So even people who are like, I don't think this is good for the humanity, are finding valuable ways to use generative AI in a business context. So that's the first moment. Like, basically, I like people who have strong opinions. I have strong opinions, but I like people who have strong opinions that are a little bit weakly held, right? And are willing to like be convinced. So that's the first thing I really look for. The second thing, so basically that's like people willing to lean in to use AI in an experimental way. That's moment one. The second thing that I look for is essentially like the second order effects of those experiments starting to happen. So, I'll get on the phone and like, well, the clients tell me what they want to do. And I give them this AI playbook and kind of give them a step-by-step set of instructions. And like 2 weeks later, we'll get back together. I'm like, all right, how is everything going? And my favorite clients, and this happens probably 70% of the time, is when they're like, oh, yeah, Justin, we're way past that at this point. Here was the first experiment that you saw, and that inspired the second experiment. And now we're on the fifth experiment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, that makes my day. Like, where they just keep playing it through, and they're kind of like the metaphor I use, Mateo, is like, the on-ramp to generative AI for most SMBs just doesn't exist. But my thesis is the on-ramp is not long and it is not steep, right? And I've seen a lot of evidence from my clients that like with just a little bit of grounding and a little bit of coaching and support, people figure this stuff out very quickly, and they can start to create a lot of value all on their own.
So someone is, what's your advice for the audience? Someone is listening and they're going like, wow, yeah, I'm excited. I want to get started. Besides, subscribing to AI for SMBs, what else how will they get started? Does it, what will be like a complete virgin with AI? Like
Yes. Yes.
download ChatGPT and start using. What will be your advice for that person?
Yes. Okay. So I have the same advice for everybody. Pick an AI model, like pick a family of models, pick Gemini, pick Claude, or pick ChatGPT. If the person is not going to do anything with visuals, Claude is great. If you're doing visuals, you got to use Gemini or ChatGPT. And otherwise, it doesn't really matter. They're pretty similar. Look at their calendars and pay for the access. Like pay the $20 for the month, right? So you get the full unfettered access. You want the most capable version of the stuff you can possibly use. And look at your calendar and pick 3 consecutive days. So start on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Don't do this over a weekend. And for those 3 days, you're going to make yourself use generative AI for every single thing that you do, right? In the beginning, it's going to be very awkward. Morning of day one, most of your time will be, I have to do this. Let me go type into ChatGPT. Hey, ChatGPT, this is what I'm working on. How could you help me? It'll have ideas. Like if you don't know how it can help you, ask it, and it will tell you how it can help you. By afternoon of day one, you won't have to ask it as much. You'll start to get a hang of, oh, it can do this. It can do this. I'm going to ask it for this kind of help, right? By the afternoon of day two, Most people are at the point where they're like, I don't know how this isn't how I've worked my entire career. This is a completely different paradigm. And I warn people between day 2 and day 3, you might have a bit of a sleepless night because you freak yourself out because you kind of fully understand the implications and you have trouble getting to sleep. And then, my metaphor is it's like riding a bicycle. Like you could go to a week-long seminar in a classroom and it would tell you everything about how a bicycle works. And you would walk out of that seminar and you still can't ride a bike. Generative AI is the same way. You can't watch stuff about it. You can't read about it. You must use it yourself and you will fall and skin your knee and you won't know how it works and you'll fall for a hallucination because you won't realize it's hallucinating. You have to do that. And then as it's like that moment when you finally get on the bike and you can ride the bike, you're like, my world is changed. Oh my gosh, how could I don't even remember what it was like not to ride a bike. Generative AI is exactly the same way. So that's my advice for everybody. Learn how to ride the bike. Like you got to fall, you got to skin your knee, you got to get back on it. And like, it's going to take some time, some tries. Like it is clunky the first 4 or 5 hours you use it. You've just got to push through it.
I absolutely love it. Learn how to ride the bike. This you just gave me the snippet for the episode, Justin.
Excellent.
It's beautiful. I have a final random question to you that I'm afraid to ask. What do you do when you are not working?
Oh man. So this is great. This is the end of my workday today. So I'll tell you what I'm doing next. I live in rural southern part of Michigan. And it's spring now, which is my favorite time of year. So we're on like 10 and a half acres of land. And so I spend a lot of time outside. But to make it AI related, so after this, I'm going to go mow the grass, which for me is about a 3.5 hour adventure. It's got a lot of grass to mow. I have one of those like big riding lawnmowers with 2 handles on it and everything, which I get a kick out of. But I love to do yard work because I listen to long form AI podcasts. And there are many wonderful, very long form AI podcasts. So technically speaking, like it's not really work because like I enjoy just listening to the stuff, but like, hitting the backyard, doing a big yard project while I listen to like the newest episode of the Dwarcash podcast is probably what I do the rest of the day.
So to tell me more about that backyard, do you plant anything or it's just like a huge lawn? Tell me about it.
Yes. Okay. So
visualize
let's see. So we're 10 and a half acres in total. It's about 3 acres of grass that I got to go and mow. And so that takes me a little bit of time. A lot of it's wooded. We're on a river. So some of it's actually like marshy.
Nice.
But then the real killer feature is we have a pond in our backyard, like a 1/4 acre pond that is swimmable. And so we spend a lot of the year kind of maintaining it. And then we swim in it all summer, which is really delightful.
Does it have like fish as well or?
Yeah, so we didn't put this pond in. The guy who owned this place before us did a lot of work. And sometime we think in the like mid 90s, he put some baby koi in this pond. And so we have 2 koi that are like this big that live in the pond. And one of them only has 1 eye, which just sounds really cool.
That in itself is a story for your daughter that she could write about the koi fish and why there's one with an eye and everything. It's amazing.
Yes. So we've bass, koi, and then bluegill. So a couple of fish. And yeah, it's a delight. It's a delight. I live in southern Michigan, and it's spring, and this is like the time of year to live here.
Beautiful. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Justin, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Mateo, I've loved this conversation. Thanks so much, man.